Is VeChain's primary native token called VET going to the price of $1? Is that what I still have my sights on for this bull run? The answer is yes, even though that's not financial advice. Now, the reason being is because when I take a look at VeChain, it's this perfect project that is focused on enterprise adoption, but also is focused on the retail side of things as well. And I do like this because I've seen in some cases projects that are too hyper-focused on the enterprise market, they sometimes don't really do that well. But when I take a look at sometimes in other cases, projects that are too focused on retail, it just kind of feels like the future really is uncertain. But when it comes to this, it's kind of like a best of both worlds. And let me explain why. Because I first want to talk about the fundamentals of VeChain to get a better understanding as to what this project is even attempting to do in the first place. VeChain is focused on something called supply chain management. Basically it's focused on the supply chain management market. Now, why could this be something that is very amazing? It's because if we take a look at, according to Polaris Market Research, the supply chain management market size is expected to exceed $58 billion by 2030, which I think is very amazing. Now, some people out there, they may be thinking, whoa, okay, you said around 58 billion. Again, when it comes to this example, the market size, predicted value at least. But then VET, if it were to go to the price of $1, considering current circulating supply, market cap would be around $86 billion. Some people may have a hard time believing that, hey, how can something like VET, let's say, go to around an $86 billion market cap, whereas the primary market that VeChain is focused on is not even expected to reach that size anytime soon? Well, my response is this. During a fully fledged bull run, people usually care about the narrative, they care about the story, they care about what something could be, as opposed to being focused on what market is really focused on, in my opinion. They just like the story and the narrative. My reasoning is this. Take a look at, for instance, Dogecoin and Shiba Inu. What market are they focused on? You know what I mean? So the way to take a look at it is that this is not such a big factor. Not to mention, we take a look at many NFT projects out there, many blockchain gaming, many DeFi projects. Of course, I'm talking about decentralized finance. They say they're going to launch this, launch that. They never launch anything really. And then during a fully fledged bull run, they do very well. Now, again, why? I think it's because people care about the story and the narrative. And I think VeChain does tick that box because if you take a look at it, first of all, supply chain management, I feel like a lot of businesses out there in one way or another could potentially improve their supply chain management. Not to mention as well, if we take a look at something like VeChain, its partnerships is really A+, and I think this is really going to contribute to it gaining a lot of validation, especially once the market really picks up. Because, for instance, it's even partners with Deloitte, PricewaterhouseCoopers. We take a look at BMW, H&M, LVMH. Of course, I'm talking about Louis Vuitton, Moet Hennessy, and also the government of Cyprus, and much more. So the way I view it is that this is a very underrated project. It's not small by any means, but I think sometimes people don't view it in that high of a regard. But I think these partnerships do validate as to how amazing VeChain is because, or should I say, give a lot of validation. Now, again, the reason is because I feel like these large enterprises, they don't want to partner with something random that they don't really care about. They usually do their due diligence. They have a team. They're not just doing stuff out on a whim. They're not going on X or anything like that. Or let's say asking their tennis coach or their neighbor or whatever if they should be, believing in VeChain. I think there's a lot more layers to that, especially when it comes to these enterprises when they want to make a decision. But even besides that point, again, I think this does give a lot of validation for VeChain. Now, I think another unique factor that VeChain has is the fact that the VeChain Tor blockchain, many people would argue, is one of the most reliable within this space. Now, why do I even believe any glimpse of that? I would say it's because when I take a look at it, the VeChain Tor blockchain, ever since 2018, guess how many network outages it has had? And some people may be thinking, okay, around 5, maybe 10. No, the answer is actually 0. Could you imagine that? Ever since 2018, 0 network outages. Now, some people may be thinking, okay, who cares? VeChain Tor isn't even the biggest to begin with. Who cares about this? Well, I believe that a lot of enterprises do care about it because, of course, they want to know that something is reliable, and this is very reliable indeed, in my opinion. Now, not to mention as well, why do I believe that even beyond being focused on the enterprise market, let's say, why is VeChain also having an aspect of being focused on the retail side of things as well? Now, the reason is because, for instance, we take a look at the deal that VeChain had with PowerSlap. Now, PowerSlap is allegedly founded by Dana White. Dana White is the UFC person. Not to mention, VeChain, amazingly enough, also has a partnership with the UFC. So again, we take a look at what it's doing with Power Slap, what it's doing with UFC. I think this is very amazing in terms of gaining a lot of retail exposure. Because again, just imagine how many people watch something like the UFC, for example, and they see VeChain there. I think this is just very amazing. Like very similar to what Hedera is doing with Karate Combat. I'm not sure if everyone's heard about it, but I think it's pretty famous. Again, when it comes to Karate Combat, we saw what Hedera is doing there, and VeChain, again, what they're doing at the UFC, what they're doing at the Power Slap. So I do really like where VeChain is heading, both in the enterprise side of things and also in the retail side of things. They understand advertising, but they also understand, hey, we should also be focused on rock solid fundamentals. So the way to take a look at it is that during a fully fledged bull run, VeChain could be something very amazing. Now, it should be noted, though, that when it comes to VET, it is the primary native token of the VeChain platform. Now, people may be thinking, okay, what do you mean? So that means there's a secondary token? Well, arguably, I would say, yeah, kinda, because if we take a look at it, VET, it's used to transfer value across the platform. Whereas if we take a look at something called VTHO, now VTHO stands for VeChain Thor Energy. That is basically kind of like a gas token, basically kind of used for gas fees, in my opinion. But the way you take a look at it is that, they both play a very vital role, but of course, that is what I'm primarily focused on. Now, $1, again, like I mentioned earlier on the video, considering current circulating supply, market cap at that point would be around $86 billion, around a 42x from here. I don't think it's too bad. Take a look at BNB, for instance. BNB reached over $100 billion in market cap back in 2021. And I just kind of feel like this is a lot more dynamic, again, when it comes to, VeChain, because the way I view it is that, here's the thing. Back in 2023, according to Crypto.com research, slightly over 2% of the crypto hacks that happened that year actually occurred on the BNB Smart Chain ecosystem. While that figure actually may not seem like that much, slightly over 2%, we have to consider how massive the crypto space is overall. So that's unacceptable in my opinion. So when I take a look at something like that, I just don't see why this is too crazy. If something like BNB could exceed over $100 billion in market cap, why can't VET at least go to around $86 billion? Not to mention as well, back in the peak of the 2021 bull run, there was roughly around 300 million crypto owners. Now, there's over 600 million according to Crypto.com research, more than ever before in history. So this time around, with more crypto owners, with the Bitcoin ETF, the Ethereum ETF, the number of institutional investors, the amount of enterprise adoption, not to mention the anticipation of what the Solana ETF in Canada could hypothetically bring to this space. Also, we take a look at just a lot more people being very knowledgeable when it comes to this space as well. They had years to restudy what it's all about because of the bear market, of course, that we saw, quite a while back ago. And also, some people would argue that, hey, we're in a bear market, but I disagree with that. I think the bull run is far from over. But even besides that, again, I just feel like there's a lot more positive factors this time around. Now, why is this bull run not over hypothetically yet? Because there is going to be the end to it, but I don't think it's over yet. The reason being is because altcoins usually, as a worst case scenario, historically speaking, they peak around a year and a half after a Bitcoin halving event. Are we a year and a half removed from the last Bitcoin halving event? No, we're not. We're actually around a year removed from it, actually, because the last Bitcoin halving event happened in April of last year. So a year and a half from then is actually around October of this year. And of course, this is just history, right? I'm just taking a look at as to what things have done in the past, and I'm making a deduction as to what could maybe happen in the future. But the way to take a look at it is that I'm going to pay attention to that nonetheless, because again, I think the bull run is far from over, and I'm paying more so attention near the end of this year, even though it's not a guarantee. I'm willing to take that chance because VET at the price of $1, that's still my price target for this bull run. And make sure to subscribe if you gain value from this video. I'd greatly appreciate it. It's only the captain, and I'll catch y'all on the next one. I'm up. Peace. Bye.